Thank you, my dear friend, Rabbi Marcus. I wasn't aware that this is an appeal. It wasn't planned with me, but I can say I won't appreciate if people will be forthcoming. So this is my very last speaking engagement in Queens, and it really was a remarkable weekend and very special to me. So first and foremost, I want to thank my gracious host in Queens, that is Shimmy Eidel's and his gracious wife. We had a beautiful Shabbos. And I told Shimmy this morning, usually when I come to a community for Shabbos, every meal has 20 participants and it takes very long. And that's personally the hardest part of my being away. This was a very quiet Shabbos, just a family Shabbos, and it's beautiful. And what was special about my Queens experience is really the variety, the diversity. We start off Thursday night in the Young Israel of Hillcrest, the Swedish minion of Rabbi Friedman, seeing an old European rabbi with white pants and white socks. That's where I come from, you know. And the climax with a beautiful Bukharian community with my dear and recent friend, Rav Meirov, and Yachad Shifti Yisrael, and being able to address all of you and seeing the achdus of this community was to me very appealing and very special. So when I walk into a place, I usually ask the host, what am I supposed to do here? What should I speak about? Is it halacha or chizik or... And my gracious host, Rabbi Krauss, asked me to say dvar halacha, short dvar halacha. So let's talk about the spirit of Tisha B'Av. Kol ha-mitzvos ha-noyegois ba'oval, noyegois b'Tisha B'Av. And that's at the very end of Masechet Tanis, and Tanis Daf Lamed. And all the halachas of Aveilus relevant, apply to Tisha B'Av as well. But I think the spirit of Tisha B'Av is not the same as the spirit of Aveilus. There's a gewaltige chiddush in Rashi and Sukkah Daf Chof Hey. The Gemara asks, a chosen, first night after his wedding, is poto mekriya Shema, because he's totaled v'tarded the mitzvah. He's consumed, he's worried, he's preoccupied with the mitzvah he is expected to perform, and that is why he's poto mekriya Shema. So the Gemara asks, why is an Avel chayav b'kol ha-mitzvahs? And why doesn't he fit the same criteria, torud b'tarded the mitzvah? And the Gemara says, Aveilus is a tarded the reshus. It's not a tarded the mitzvah. And Rashi explains that the mitzvah of Aveilus is all about kvod hameis. Tsar is not a mitzvah. And Avel doesn't have a mitzvah to be sad. He doesn't have a mitzvah to be down. DNA Aveilus are all about kvod hameis. And Rashi says that again in Ksuvitz Davov, twice in Shas. So the question is, but a moed kon Dav Chov Zayin, and this Imam Chazal most of us would be familiar with, those that sat Shiva during their lifetime, Shloishu lebechi, Shivu lehesbid, Shloshim legihutz v'letisporet. Chazal give us a breakdown of the 30 days of Aveilus. The first 3 days are for crying, 7 days for hesped, 30 days for all the other DNA Aveilus. So if another doesn't have a mitzvah to cry, how do we understand Shloishu lebechi? The Oroch Naner and Sukkah Chof Hey, Lasem is Shabbos Kuf Nun Aleph. They say Shloishu lebechi means you're not required to cry 3 days, not more than 3 days. That is what Chazal mean, Shloishu lebechi. And to me, that is extremely unreasonable, because Shloishu lebechi must have the same interpretation as Shiva lehesped and Shloshim leAveilus. Shiva lehesped cannot be, don't be masped more than 7 days. And why not? Shloshim leAvel means 30 days you need to be noyeg mineg Aveilus. It cannot be understood not more than 30 days. You have a chiyuv of dinei Aveilus 30 days. So Shlosh Lebechi must be the same interpretation as Shiva Hesped and Shloshim La'avelus, Legias Vilas Aspiris. So this pshat is unreasonable. Shabbos Kuf Nun Aleph, the Gemara tells a story, a exchange between Reb Chanina and his wife, somewhat an unpleasant exchange. So Reb Chanina had a little girl that died, and he did not cry, and his wife was very disturbed. And very cynically, she asked, Tana gulta afkis me besach? Did you throw out a chicken of your home? How did you not cry when our daughter passed away? And Abchanina responded, Tichla v'ivola. And he said, I have an eye ailment, and crying might diminish my eyesight. And that is why I cannot and I should not cry. And that is where this Vasema says, but if you have a chiyuv, doesn't the chiyuv override your chashash? So this Vasema says, doesn't have a chiyuv. You don't need to cry. You shouldn't cry more than 3 days. Rabbi Yankov Emden on the spot asks the same question. And Rabbi Yankov Emden says, no, a person is not required to lose his eyesight or diminish his eyesight in order to be a kaim a mitzvah. So Rav Chanina says, my heart cried, my soul cried, but I needed to abstain from shedding tears as not to hurt my eyes. So how do I understand Shlosh Lebechi? Fascinating tshuva in Radbaz. Chele Gimel Simentov Kuf Nun Hey. The Radbaz is asked, Echod HaGedolim. Obviously, he was a Godel. Echod MeGedoil Ador had a child that passed away, and he did not cry. Does that prove that he's a Gevaldig Tzaddik? And the Radbaz writes, it proves that he is an Achzor, not that he's a Tzaddik. V'noag minag Achzori. Avrom Avinu cried. V'yove Avrom lispoid esora v'levkoisa. And Rashi writes her as a oiza iro because she was old. And therefore, he didn't cry that much. But Avrom Avinu cried. And whom are we supposed to emulate if not the Oves Agdosha? So the Radbaz says, that Godel noag minag achzori. So the way I see it, of course you're supposed to cry because you're human, and that's nature. And that's the way Kodesh Baruch Hu made us. So the Ramban in Pirushi ala Torah, Peresh and Ramban Torah on the Posuk, Lo yisasimu krocho bein einechem lemeis. The Ramban says, don't exaggerate. Don't tear your flesh. Aval HaTorah lo te'asor et habechi. Ki teva ha'adam livkois behipored ha'ohavim. It is human nature to cry. When you part from a loved one, teva ha'adam livkois behipored ha'ohavim. Anshe kodesh tiyun li. The Kotzker Rebbe said, and I love Kotzker Vortim, not because they're short, because they're sharp. Anshe Kodesh Tiyun Li, said the Kotzker Rebbe, menschlich heilig, human holy. Don't pretend and don't try to be like the angels. The angels are up there above. You were put down here. Menschlich heilig, Anshe Kodesh, human holiness. So the Ramban writes, yes, you should cry. And Shlosh Lebechi means you are expected to cry 3 days. Laloi hafugois. That is what you are supposed to do. But Dine Aveilus are not about Tzar. Dine Aveilus are about Choid HaMeis. Tzar is natural. Tzar doesn't have to do with Dine Aveilus. And that is Pshat Rashi. So when a chosin is Torah about the mitzvahs of Aveilus, that is a Torah de Reshus, because Tsar is not your mitzvah. It is not the mitzvah of Aveilus, but it is natural. And that is how you should be. That is what Avram did when his elderly wife passed away. So let me share you a very personal note. You know, my parents passed away. I'm an old man, as you see. My father was 90. My mother was 93, both were Holocaust survivors. When they passed away, I cried. Needless to say, it is so painful to say goodbye to a parent. But when my wife passed away and she was 60, it was far more painful. So Avraham Avinu cries over his old wife. And yes, he didn't cry that much. The story of the Bazit was a child that passed away, and this girl didn't cry, and the Rebbe is very harsh about that. And he writes, Noeg minad achzorim, and obviously he was a great person, but he was awfully wrong, as the Rebbe says. So shlosh lebechi means cry. It is what you should be doing, but that is not the essence of Dine Aveilus. You don't have a mitzvah to be b'tzar. It is the way you are, and don't try to be different. It is the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you. But Dine Aveilus and Mrs. Aveilus are about Kvoid HaMeis. The Rambam Perek Yud Gimel Aloch Yud Beis Aveilus Aveilus writes that the essence of Dine Aveilus are about Tshuva. Because just like the Rambam teaches us, Perek Aleph of Hilchas Taniyos, when tragedy strikes Klal Yisrael, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is calling out to us, come back and do tshuva, open your eyes. The same is when tragedy strikes an individual. And death is always a manifestation of Midas Hadin, and it always calls to us, Lefashpesh Mamasa Velachze B'tshuva. And it is interesting, in Perek Yud Beis of Hilchas Aveilus, that Rambam writes a person that is not into Hilchas Aveilus, and he does not act accordingly, is an achzori. And that is exactly the expression that Adbaz uses in his Shuvah. And it is the expression that Rambam uses in Perek Aleph of Hilchos Daniyos when hardship and difficulty and pain strike the community. And the Rambam once again uses the same language. A person that doesn't do tshuva when tragedy or hardship strikes the community, he is noag minig achzori. So my understanding is Shlosh Lebechi means Shlosh Lebechi, but that is not the essence of Aveilus. So on one hand, if Rashi says Tzar is not a mitzvah, and I say, but it is what you should have, what does the mitzvah of Nichum Aveilus mean? It clearly indicates that an Ovel is supposed to be Mekabel Tanchum. If he is not supposed to accept consolation, what would be the mitzvah of Nichum Aveilus? It is totally unreasonable to say we have a mitzvah to be Menachem and he has the mitzvah to fight and not to be Misnachem. If we have a mitzvah of Nichum Aveilus, obviously, he has the mitzvah Lekabel Tanchum. So if the mitzvah would be Tsar, we cannot understand the mitzvah of Nichum Aveilus. Why are you taking away his mitzvah? He is supposed to be B'tzar. According to my understanding, this makes so much sense and has so much appeal. He doesn't have a mitzvah to be B'tzar, but that's the way he is. And he is supposed to be Makavel Tanchumim and be Mischazik. To be Mischazik in Tzedek Hadin. And to say with all the pain, I know HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves me. I know it's the way it needs to be. And I know and I hope that the deceased will get up there, and that is where real life begins. So that is the mitzvah of Nichum Aveilus. So just to summarize, according to Rashi, Dine Aveilus are about Kvoid HaMeis. According to the Rambam, Dine Aveilus are to bring us to Tshuva and Tikkun HaMasim. But the state of mind needs to be Tsar, and the Nichum Aveilus is, yes, the Ovel is B'tzar, and try to give him Chizuk. So I have a unique pshat, a unique interpretation. Our meaning is to put a rock on the caver. They're going to put flowers on the caver. Why is that? I think nothing in nature is as beautiful as a flower. And some flowers are just dazzling, the combinations of colors. So I have a very dear friend, Chaim Wolf, who was also a dear friend of our host, a cousin of our host, Chaim Wood from Passaic. Maybe some of you know him. He's my flower man. He brings flowers to my home every Erev Shabbos, every week, different flowers, and I enjoy them. By Monday, I want them out. Because flowers are beautiful, not only for a fleeting hour, they are so temporary. And withering flowers are not the most pleasant sight. So nothing is as beautiful as a flower, but with a very short lifespan. A rock is not very beautiful, but it is the most enduring thing in nature. A rock is forever. To them, they put flowers on a cave. It was great, it was beautiful, but it's over. And how sad that is. To us, it's never over. This is where it all really begins. We put a rock on a cave, as to say and to indicate it's not over. Goodbye, my dear one, but we'll meet at some stage, and we're confident this is a beginning more than it is an end. So we put rock on a cave. So a novel doesn't have a mitzvah to be b'tzar, but Tisha B'Av, the mitzvah is to be b'tzar. And in this aspect, the spirit of Tisha B'Av is different than the spirit of Aveilus. A novel is mechuyev to try to overcome, to be meschazik, to alleviate his tzar. Tisha B'Av is different. Tisha B'Av, we should be b'tzar. So the Gemara, Tanis Daf Chof Tes, describes Suda HaMafsekes, Erev Tisha B'Av, Pas Charevo V'Mayim, V'Yoshev Ben Tanur L'Kirayim K'mi Shemeisei Mutar Lefanov. There's a Brisker word. The Briskerov says, I love the Briskerov's Verte, even though I disagree with most of them. They're always very original. So the Briskerov says, Erev Tisha B'Av is Aninas, Tisha B'Av is Aveilus. It is only Erev Tisha B'Av, Yoshev Ben Tana L'Karayim V'Doima K'mi Shemeisei Mutar Lefanov. Meisa Mutar Lefanov, you are not Menachem Anovel, you probably know that, and Oinen is not Mekabel Tanchumim. Tisha B'Av is La'achas Timas HaGoyel, Tisha B'Av is Aveilus and Aranina. So according to the Briskerov, there is no Issa and Bosa V'Yayin Tisha B'Av. And a choyle that is entitled to eat or must eat could eat Bosa V'Yayin. And Ovel is not also Bosa V'Yayin, and Oinen is. And I wonder, because according to Shechanoch, Moitzor Tisha B'Av, you can't have Bosa V'Yayin. A day after Tisha B'Av, till Chatzos, you don't have Bosa V'Yayin. It is totally unreasonable that Moitzor Tisha B'Av, you go back to Aninas. After Tisha B'Av was Aveilus, to me it is clear, Anina starts by Suda Mafsekes. And Tisha B'Av is a combination of Aninas and Aveilus Gam Yachad. Aninas doesn't end by Tisha B'Av. Yes, Tisha B'Av is about Aveilus, but definitely Tisha B'Av is an Isra of Bosa V'Yayin. Kal v'choyme moitzoi Tisha B'Av. So Tisha B'Av is different, and Tisha B'Av is a combination of Aninas and Aveilus. And Tisha B'Av, there is no Tanchimum. Mi'ano lehinachem. And Tisha B'Av, we should be b'tzahar, remembering Korban Habayis. And that is the spirit of Tisha B'Av, unlike the spirit of Aveilus, in which a person is supposed to be a Kavat Tanchumim. Maybe Tisha B'Av afternoon is the time in which we start in Chizuk, and that is when we say Nachem. We don't say Nachem B'Shachris, we do say Nachem B'Mincha. Nachem is a plea to HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be Menachem us. And what would the Tanchumim be? Binyan Yerushalayim. Maybe Tisha B'Av afternoon is somewhat different, but I still think Tisha B'Av is a combination of Aninas and Aveilus. And unlike an Avar that doesn't have a mitzvah of tzar, it's just his natural state of mind. Tisha B'Av, there's a mitzvah to be b'tzar and Aveilus and Churban Beis Hamikdash. So you gave me 18 minutes, but I didn't look whether the 18 minutes are up or not. So I said so many times since we started this beautiful weekend in this community in Queens, that Tisha B'Av is not only about Aveilus. And if the Rambam writes, every Avel on a relative that passed away is required the fashpesh mamas of the nafs of the tshuva, that definitely applies to Tisha B'Av. Very much so. So Tisha B'Av night we sit on the floor and we say Eicha. Many people will be shocked to learn that Megillas Eicha was written before Chorban Habayis, not after. And Rashi quotes the Medrash on the very first posek in Eicha, Eichu Yosh V'Bodor. In the Navi Yirmiyahu, Perek Lamed Vav, the Navi says that the Navi Yirmiyahu wrote a Megillah and he presented it to Yehoyakim, Melech Yisrael. And when Yehoyakim read the Megillah, he was furious. He tore it to shreds and he threw it into the fireplace. He burnt it. But the Navi doesn't say what was in that Megillah. And Chazal say that was Megillah's Eicha. And the Navi wrote it, Beruach HaKodesh, before tragedy, before the Chorban, calling out to the Melech, see to it, turn to the people, we need to do tshuva to prevent tragedy. And that is when Megillah Eicha was written, and it was rewritten after the tragic events of Chorban Habayis. So Megillah Eicha is a Megillah about mourning, but it was written by Yirmiyahu Navi before mourning was the call of the day. Megillah Eicha originally was written as a call to do tshuva. It was rewritten when Yehoyakim refused, and he did nothing to prevent the Chorban. So it goes without saying that Megillah Eicha hasn't changed its nature. It is the same Megillah as the original one. And this Megillah calls out to us not only to sit on the floor and cry and weep and mourn, but to prevent tragedy. And we should be Zeicha to the restoration, to the rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash. And that is what Megillah Eicha was about. And that is what Tisha B'Av is all about. As the Rambam explained, so last Thursday night I spoke at great length and many other opportunities I had in Queens, and this is a theme I always speak about wherever I am, whether I am at home in Yerushalayim or wherever I am. V'hu emes v'shalom ahevu. The first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed for lack of appreciation and love of Torah. Shaloi borchu b'Torah techila, like the Gemara says in both Messiah Pei Hey and in Adoram Pei Aleph. The second Beis HaMikdash was all about sinas chinam. V'hu emes v'shalom ahevu. When we will learn to appreciate Torah, to support Torah, and to learn Torah, and to love Torah, and we will be like Aaron HaKohen, Oyeves Abrios, Roidev Shalom, Oyeves Abrios Umakavan LeTorah, Bo Emes Vashalom Ahevu. Then, and only then, could we really expect that we should be Zoicha, Bekium Divri Hanavi, Tzoma Revi'i, V'Tzoma Chamishi, Tzoma Shvi'i, V'Tzoma Asiri. Yehu lebeis Yehuda lesosain ulesimcha ulemoyadim toivim b'meheru v'yomeinu amen. Thank you for this beautiful Shabbos, and our gracious host, Mr. Krause. Thank you for hosting this very last engagement, my last opportunity to speak to beautiful members of our community. Okay, so we have a few more minutes. Questions? Anybody that has any questions? Be happy to try to answer.
Well, sorry, Shabbos last night. We didn't consider Tisha B'Av Yom Tov. Is that a chisaron?
No, you don't need to consider Tisha B'Av a Yom Tov. You need to hope that Tisha B'Av would be a Yom Tov. As of now, we were in Zeichen. Hope. We're the people of hope. And exactly like it's phrased in Yud Gimel Ekron. Achar pi sheyismamea im kol zeh achakel lo b'kol yom sheyavo. We wait, we patiently wait. It's not a Yom Tov yet. We hope it will be. So let me share with you a psak. And when I give a psak halacha, I don't mind if people disagree. That is the nature of Torah. And many times I apologize when a person questions my judgment, and I say, in my tshuvas and in my shiurim, sometimes I argue against the Tzaysa Choshen and Rabbi Kiva Eiger and the Chassam Sofer, Hachidarka Shel Torah. I would be the most arrogant fool in the world if I would be matbed if someone argues against me. So whatever I say is always open for discussion and disagreement, except the psak I'm sharing with you now. I have zero tolerance for anybody that would disagree with this psak. So my psak is, B'korav b'yameinu, and we will be zoicha that Tisha B'Av will be l'sasan or l'simcha or l'moyadim tovim. We will have 2 days of Yom Tov. Why 2 days? Because the Yochanan says, if I would be in the days of Churban Beis Hamikdash, I would suggest Tisha B'Av should be Asara B'Av, because that is the day in which Nisraf Ruboy Shalaycho. But the Gedolim of that age decided, Atchalte de Poranuta Odif. Tisha B'Av is the day when the tragedy began, when the Beis Hamikdash was set to torch. And I ask, so why not have 2 days Tisha B'Av? Tisha B'Av Atchalte de Poranusa and Asara B'Av because Ruboy Shalaycho Nisraf, because we can't fast 2 days. Yerushalmi tells the story of Agudah Shmuel. Shmuel's father wanted to be from Yom Kippur. He fasted 2 days and he died. You can't fast 2 days. But what's the problem? We could dance and sing 2 days. Oh, yeah, we'd be happy to do that. So, B'korav b'yameinu, when Tisha B'Av will be a Yom Tov, remember, that's my psak. We'll have 2 days Tisha B'Av. This year, Alavai, it will be 3 days. Thursday and Friday will be the Yom Tov of Tisha B'Av, and then Shabbos, and it's going to be amazing.
And the next day, they speak at the air.
Me yitain, halavai. There will be no speak in the Yom Tov because we'll go back to Kiddush of
The original.
Any other questions? I don't have many other fascinating stuff.
Well, it's not, but the eggs. The Charlotte, my Marcus spoke about.
The Garrett.
Oh, the Garrett frozen egg.
Oh, yeah. That fetus, if it would come to fruition, would need gifts.
Shiur from Yerushalayim, we had in the shul, we got these are called Avanim Tovot from Yerushalayim, and they used to say L'kavod Shabbos Kodesh, and you put it in hot water, and it cleans your whole system. It's not the question is, can you use it on Shabbos?
No, because that is Moile Dereach. You
That's
can't
what
use
the
that. That's what Rabbi Marcus said.
one of it, but we're going.
Baruch Shekivantu.
It's for sure more even because they say that they cook it in advance, and it is.
But if you put it in the
When you
water,
put it in the water,
again
okay,
becomes
it'll be bad.
that is Moile Dereach.
In the Rav Shad on Erev Tisha B'Av, the Erev Tisha B'Av is only Aninas. Tisha B'Av is Aninas and Aveilus combined. So how does the Rav understand on Matzah Tisha B'Av that you go back to only Aninas because we still are not to eat
No,
Basar.
Matzah Tisha B'Av is still a combination of Aninos and Aveilus, but lesser, more lekula. So Matzah Tisha B'Av is a minhag. It's not me'ikal adin. So we're meikal. Tisha B'Av. The only kula we have Tisha B'Av afternoon is we sit on a normal seat and we no longer need to sit on the floor. And Matzah Tisha B'Av is far more intimate. This year, Matzah Tisha B'Av, you can even do laundry because it's L'kavod Shabbos.
Cholent on Thursday night, Mitzvah Tisha B'Av.
What?
Thursday night, Cholent, Mitzvah Tisha B'Av. Pretty important to have Cholent Thursday night.
But I think you're used to the Thursday night shoot to a parallel.
Someone asked whether the gather of Sudas mitzvah to be matter basar v'yayin during the 9 days is a celebration of a kiyum mitzvah or of a chiyuv mitzvah.
Let me say this. I always have many siyums, in store. And usually, sometimes I visit a person's house, I have many siyums in store, but I never made a siyum in the 9 days to eat meat. The din of a siyum is, if coincidentally you happen to eat Messiah and Masechta, and it's really a big simcha, do it. But those people that plan their siyums in order to eat meat, I don't get it. You're planning to circumvent Aveilus on Korban bias. Doesn't make sense. You're planning not to be mishaber al Yerushalayim. If you happen to make a siyum and it really is a simcha, you're entitled to eat meat. It's a sudas mitzvah. I hear that there are some restaurants in Manhattan that have a yeshiva boy come in every day to make a siyum, and the guests have nothing to do with the siyum. They don't know that boy. They weren't even present when he made the siyum, and this is something to me which is outrageous. So
Let's say this.
I never made a siyum to eat the meat in the 9 days, even though I always have made a siyum.
What about in the camps where the Nayag very often, in the summer camps, they make siyumin so that the
So if
children can.
If the focus is really on the simcha of a siyum, that is okay. But if everybody knows it doesn't make a siyum to eat meat, that doesn't fit in well with me.
The chiluk between the Bechi and Tisha B'Av and the Bechi and the Avil. So we find that the Tisha B'Av now will be mahar. We did right there, there's no this different Avil, because by Tisha B'Av it's the Bechi is the mitzvah, as opposed to Avil it's just to be no covered hamas. So it's an haga klapichutz.
But that in itself is a discussion. Whether Hillel is good, very good, good point. One more.
I heard a nice reason that the restaurants do it, because Siddur Shita that you can partake in a siyum if you're paying the Messiah. So there's Isman the Chashutaf in the siyum. So Mamela, if the balabas of the restaurant is paying somebody for the siyum, so Mamela, everybody who's paying is paying towards that. So Mamela is a shut. I'm not talking about the first Hanacha, the Rav Hanacha about not making the siyum.
Yes,
If the Messiah is a woman who's not chayiv in Talmud Torah, but
Let's talk about it in another opportunity.
Separate discussion.
I thank our gracious host, and this is really a beautiful siyum. Beautiful siyum to my visit in Queens, and Bezrat Hashem, we hope to be back.